Hello and welcome to the Annie Altman Show, the podcast, Season 5. Welcome to the 6th episode in the Community C series. I'm so happy I get to be here today with Michelle McGregor for her 3rd time on the podcast. Thank you for humoring me 3 times with this amount of podcasting. Please check out the first 2 episodes. Michelle came on as well. Check out, I'll put all of her links in the bio for wherever you're listening to this, or if you're watching us on YouTube, so you can check out all the different projects that she does and things she has upcoming. Michelle is, I don't even know which one I want to say first because they all 3 feel equally singer and comedian and actress who is also launching a podcast about endometriosis called In the Gnosis about endometriosis, who will help connect communities of people who are dealing with the same illness and feeling alone and isolated, and using a podcast to remind people that they're not the only one going through it, that there's resources, that there's connections, that there's options. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see Michelle's wonderful pink headphones that suit you so well.
Thank you.
We got a dog bark. Welcome, and thank you so much for being here. Thank you for coming on again.
Thanks for having me. Thank you for humoring me. I love doing your show. Always the best conversations.
Yeah, we do. We go into cool places, and I liked on the second one, you were my first guest to ever do a Zoom PowerPoint.
Oh, right. The whiteboard. Mm-hmm. That was fun. I actually used that for my class. I taught an acting class on Zoom this, fall or whenever, summer, spring, sometime the previous 6 months. And I used the whiteboard and people were very impressed as well. It's an underutilized tool of Zoom.
It is like the old school chalkboard. It's like, and also getting visual learners, giving more options for how you're going about it. Zoom's most underutilized tool, this resource.
It is. It is.
Are there other things? How would you like to introduce yourself to the podcast, or things that you want to highlight on or touch on? Yeah.
No, I hope everybody is doing well. I know it's been a crazy year and some change. And I hope everybody is staying healthy and sane. Getting outside is what has been sort of saving me. Just to take my dog out, I'm reminded that I'm human and nature's, I feel very isolated sometimes. I just had surgery, as you know, Annie, and so I've been extra inside, and it starts to make me feel crazy. So I just hope people are treating themselves well. How's that? That's all I have to say.
I love it. I love how that connects to our episodes.
I'll say, sorry, there is one new development in my life. I don't know if it's a healthy one, but I'm now an online gamer playing Dominion. If anybody is a Dominion fan, come find me. My screen name is McGregor 4, like the number 4. Love it. Obsessed with this game. It's like the best waste of time in the world. I try not to do it too much, but I don't make promises to myself about that. It's better than watching Netflix sometimes. No, sorry.
If it's bringing you joy.
Apologies in advance for Noodle.
And Noodle's giving an exclamation and a call to fellow Dominion players listening to this podcast.
Yeah.
The link I can put in the bio too.
Sure. Yeah, I'm ranked above 41 now. That's a good rank. It's really good, I think. I used to play anybody, if I got matched up with anybody above 40, I'm always like, ooh, what are they going to do? Now that's me. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Do you want me to put her away?
Let's see if it keeps going. It'll be a... Shh. Hey, Noodle, do you want a podcast? What do you want to share with the podcast? Noodle, what are your feelings about community? Dogs know more than humans. Honestly, I feel like they are much more aware and in the know of unconditional love and community, all the things that humans are.
I agree. She doesn't listen to me. That's clear. And at this point, I don't even know what she's barking at.
Nudes. I like the contrast. Oh,
Do
Noodle.
we have editing?
I don't know. I don't edit them.
Okay, then we're just gonna roll with this. I'm just gonna grab her and be right back.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Noodle. Time is money, and you're wasting a lot of it right now for people listening. Crazo. Okay, that should help. We've shut the blinds. Might be a little more mood lighting now, but less distraction for her. I'm so sorry about that. Hi. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Welcome
And
to the pod.
what did you want to talk about, Annie?
Yeah. Well, I love even in that contrast of the beautiful reminder of community and connection and how important it is to not be alone, and then also the dominion and your hidden video game talent and ranking and passion and that community to connect with people. I like how those go together.
There's a whole community in Dominion. There's a chat box, and the dynamics in that relationship are really cracking me up because I changed my screen name specifically. It used to be Mishmabel, like Michelle Mabel, and then I changed it to McGregor 4 because I didn't want people to assume I am identifying as female, because for some reason I thought that they would judge me. Like they thought I would be easier to beat, or if I made a move that was not a good move, they'd be like, "Oh, stupid woman." Like I had all this baggage in my head about it. But then I find I'll be, playing, and I'll sometimes do a chat. I'll say like "good game" or something like that. And if I use an exclamation point, I'm like, "Oh, I blew my cover. Now they know." Now they know I'm a girl. Isn't that funny?
Funny and sad and fascinating
I
all
know.
at once, of all of the, because video games are such a male dominated, and the
Yeah,
exclamation thing in like professional and any settings where it's then that's coded
right,
as feminine because you use exclamation points more in your messaging.
right.
Whoa. And that you, so I'm curious about the feeling and the decision
Mm.
making of going on having the femaleness be undercover. And also I
I
want to
mean,
connect this somehow to the podcast, your podcast about endometriosis, and also your surgery and all the things that I know that you've gone through with different, that I have two of different things about women's health specifically, and how much
hmm,
it is this like you need to be undercover. How you don't use
yeah,
exclamation points even if that feels
yeah,
like that's what you want to type and be like great. Like I
yeah.
I love the image of you whooping ass in a video game, and then like good game with 5 exclamation points and a bunch of emojis or like a heart, like a 3 pink hearts.
Right, right. Well, the truth is, I think to connect it all, it's, it's not easy being a girl. Like that's really what it comes down to. This is definitely, a man's world, as they say. Um, and I don't know if you've ever seen the interview with James Brown. He's like really, really drunk and probably stoned. He's doing an interview and he's just completely inappropriate and just insane. And he just it keeps interrupting the interviewer, going, "This is a man's world." And she goes at the very end, she goes, "Yes, it is. Thank you for reminding us. Sometimes we forget." It's so good. She really nails it. And but it's true. And so yeah, I mean, I just found myself having these weird dynamics in my head where I'd get matched up with a player, and the first thing I would think before anything, I'd think, "Oh, they probably think that I'm making stupid moves." Like I would find myself like almost sweating, being so nervous about my behavior in this online game that's really nothing to it. I mean, it's a card game. You play it, you win or you lose. And I had all this trash in my head about it, and it really seemed to focus on the fact that I'm like, "Oh, they can tell I'm a girl. They know I'm a girl. They might, I thought that was weird." Um, and I'm sure a lot of it's just made up in my head too. Um, but just what I know we wanted to talk about, in this world of women's health and uh, women's health care and the communities around that. I mean, it's really tough. It's really uh, a world a medical world, a medical community where men have made all the rules, they've made all the decisions, and now we are dealing with the consequences of that. And in 2021, we are still living in a world where a disease like endometriosis that affects 1 in 9 to 10 women, there is no easy diagnosis for and no cure for. And it's incredibly misunderstood and mistaught. It is, in fact, doctors, OBGYNs don't know what endometriosis is or how to deal with it. And it's really dangerous, hazardous, and harmful to the community of a nearly, almost 20th of the population, if not more, of the entire world is, being told wrong information about their bodies. It's really, that's if I believed in disgraces, I would say that's got to be on the list of disgraces.
Because it's
Yeah.
a very large number of people, and it impacts everyone. Having all of these things that you're talking about, all of the ways these different systems are set up are in the long run and in different ways directly and indirectly harmful to everybody.
Yeah. And
That
it's just, there's no doubt in my mind that if endometriosis affected men, which now I will say in very, 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 very rare circumstances, they have found men with endometriosis, but that's almost 0.001 less, percentile. If this was a disease that affected 1 in 10 men, there's no way. There's no way it would be this difficult to diagnose, to cure, to treat, to get help for. I can't prove that, but I don't even know what I can do with that information either, or that assertion.
talking about it does something, and seeing the same pattern coming up in how much research and money has gone into Viagra and different things with
Right,
male sexual dysfunction, whereas
right.
literal baseline female health has been neglected. And
Yeah,
birth control being, you can look at all the different ways that male birth control has never gone through or been more
right.
accepted, because the symptoms that are the same, if not
Mm-hmm.
less than female birth control, are we can't do this to men. How dare,
Right,
how could this is unacceptable.
right. Yeah, I feel like there's, this very common side effect with female birth control, hormonal based birth controls that are, uh, they change our mood, and I feel like there's this attitude from the men in the medical community that's like, oh, but women are already crazy. Like it's not, how it's not the pills, it's they're just
Mhm.
crazy, you know?
Which is, yeah, thank you so much for bringing this up. I took hormonal birth control for almost a decade, and
Ooh,
also had taken an antidepressant for most of that time, and it totally is all interconnected in different ways, and
yeah.
it feels so gaslighty on so many levels
Mm,
of like, oh, like it's like, how far have we gone? Yes, we have evolved in all sorts of ways, and also so much of that same feeling of hysteria, and you're hysterical, you woman, you're all these things. And it's like, okay, also, not only is there an extra organs inside of your body and these different hormonal
mm-hmm.
fluctuations that are different from male hormonal fluctuations, we're also now giving you a synthetic something that is going to impact those more. But
Right.
you're like, it's like, but you're the crazy one. And then the like same feeling of all like endometriosis not being talked about, or being shamed, or being minimized. And oh, well, like, how painful is it really? Or oh, how much is it
Mm-hmm.
really? You're being weak and crazy to not just push through and do all of these things. And totally, like you said,
Yeah.
what if this was impacting 1 in 10 men? Like, have you ever brushed a male's hair versus
Yeah.
brushed a female's hair? Whose pain tolerance is higher?
Yeah. Right, right.
Every time.
I found a statistic, or there's wherever they get these studies from, that endometriosis is listed in the top 20 most painful diseases in the world. And I can only imagine what women, so it's interesting with endometriosis. Should I say what it is in case somebody's listening and they have no idea what
Yeah, that would be
endometriosis
great.
is? Okay. So endometriosis, it's a disease. It affects, as we've said, about 1 in 10 women, they think. It is where tissue that is similar to the lining of your uterus is found outside of the uterus. It's a tissue. It connects itself to any organ that it feels. It's very common to find it on the ovaries, very common to find it on the your bowels, your what's the P one? What holds our P? What's that one? The bladder.
Bladder.
But it has been found it can affect a lot of women. It'll attach to their lungs,
Wow.
um, and their diaphragm, more specifically, is more common. And there have been cases where it has been found even in the brain. It's a Because it mimics the lining of our uterus. What happens is when we menstruate, the endometrial tissue also, quote, and I use quotes, very large quotes here, menstruates. So it is very much like internal bleeding, because unlike your uterus, when it bleeds, it sheds, it has the vagina to go out of. Endometrial tissue just bleeds into itself and to other parts of your body, and it creates lesions. Like any time you have a cut, it heals itself with lesions or adhesions. I mean, adhesions. Lesions are where it kind of like tears at it, which endometriosis does as well. But these adhesions form. This can cause binding of organs, cause a lot of damage. It's a really, it's a really dangerous disease in that sense, and that's something that I don't think is talked about enough. We all know it's very painful, but it's not really talked about is as dangerous as it can be. And so what I was saying before that quick definition is I can only imagine the pain of these women who have, so there's stage 1, 2, 3, and 4 of endometriosis, which a lot of surgeons are trying to get away from, because there's a sort of false idea that stage 1 is less painful than stage 2 and so on. But really, there are women who've had stage 4 endometriosis and didn't even know it because they weren't experiencing symptoms, and then they discover in some other surgery, like, oh, did you know you had stage 4 endometriosis, like all over your body? And they're like, what? No idea. And then you'll have people like, I'm going to assert myself, whether there's a long story as to why I don't even know what stage I have. I would guess I have stage 1, and I'm in crippling pain 3 days out of the month, sometimes more. Crippling, right? uh, there are women, I mean, I'm in an endometriosis support group. Speaking of community, I don't know, it's just social media has changed everything, and our ability to create communities and create change. But there are women who, oh my gosh, it just breaks my heart. They're in debilitating pain daily, and very often they spend days out of each month in the emergency room, in the urgent care, and all they can do is take painkillers. And there's one woman, I saw a post, so she was on suicide watch because she was in so much pain, they just gave her a bucket to throw up in. They couldn't do anything for her. And I think I told you this in January. The reason I now know so much about endometriosis is because in January my pain was so high that I contemplated suicide. And I have never experienced that without it being related to my depression. So I'm not unfamiliar with suicidal ideation, but this was a newbie for me, that I would even consider something like that just to escape physical pain. That scared me so much. Like, I was terrified having that thought. And so that's when I decided I really needed to do something. Wow, I cannot believe I'm crying. Wow. Um, I decided I needed to do something about it. Thank you. Thank you. So I'd been told by doctors that the only real cure for endometriosis is a hysterectomy. So I decided, okay, it's time. I have to do this. And that's when, luckily, I found that actually hysterectomy isn't even a cure for endometriosis, but there is what they call a gold standard of care for endometriosis, called endometriosis excision surgery, where they actually go in and cut out all the endometrial tissue. So I've been on a journey trying to achieve, trying to get that care. And I am telling you something, it is not easy. I'm now on my second round of appeals with my insurance company to get approval for endometriosis excision. And in the meantime, I'm just doing what I can to, do short term care. And for me, and a lot of OBGYNs will recommend birth control because in their minds, okay, since endometriosis is triggered by estrogen, if we suppress the estrogen, then we suppress the endometriosis. Or they want to just stop our periods altogether because, okay, if it's going to react when we're on our periods, then we'll get rid of your period. And all of this is really toxic, really false information that doesn't actually address the reality of endometriosis, which is that it is a tissue that acts on its own accord. It creates its own estrogen that even if you remove the uterus, you can still have dangerous, debilitating pain and symptoms from a disease, because essentially what you're doing is going in and taking out somebody's body parts and leaving the disease behind. You know, it's insane, and it's rampant in the excuse me, noodle, in the OBGYN community. This is what almost every doctor, I would say 1 in 10 women have endometriosis. I would say 1 in 10 doctors understand endometriosis, and that's probably being very generous. I'm going to press mute if you want to say anything while she's barking. Sorry.
First, I want to say thank you so much for being honest about all of it. And I'm grateful and honored you feel comfortable to share about like a baseline of this podcast community for me is mental health and physical health and how much they connect and overlap, and the importance of talking about things like suicide and suicidal ideation and physical pain and how they all interact super openly, which is so much easier said than done, to be vulnerable and talk about these things that have been so conditioned to be hidden and that then aren't supported, which then supports it being hidden. And so it means a lot to me that you are open to share about this and put that out there for someone else who has had an experience of being in pain to the point of feeling like I would rather end everything than continue with this pain. And know that you're not crazy for that. You're not alone in that. You are not the first and you are not the last human to have that experience, and not in a minimizing or invalidating way, you're not alone in this way.
Mm-hmm.
And also to hear from you and that distinction and how powerful that is too, of, like you said, being familiar with that level of sadness and grief and feeling so sick and helpless and hopeless from depression, and then seeing how it is similar and different when it's so directly connected to physical pain.
Yes.
And then also this layer of what you're saying too, where maybe 1 in 10 trained medical professionals
Right.
have training in this thing that impacts 1 in 10 women.
I know.
That then adds another layer of gaslighting and emotional, all sorts of labels and harm, of that feeling of sitting in a doctor's office and having especially if it is a male doctor without a uterus, look at you like you're a crazy person for describing your pain. And you're there saying, isn't this your job to hear this? Isn't this my job to tell you this? How do we navigate?
And the mansplaining. Oh my gosh. So I actually, unless it's really impossible, I always have Nick, my fiance, join me at my consultations. Always. I hate being alone in the room with an OBGYN doctor, especially male doctor. And I find it, it's fascinating because we'll leave these, because I've been through so many consultations just trying through my insurance to find somebody who understands this disease. And we'll leave, and Nick will, he's the first one to say, like, whoa, what an asshole. Or, God, did you see the way he tried to, like, tell you, XYZ? And it's so funny because to him it's shocking, and to me, and I'm sure a lot of women, it's just so par for the course. And I find it what I find saddening about it is that I'm obviously holding a lot in, because as soon as I get out and I hit the car, I just start crying. It's like, for some reason, when I'm in the room with these doctors, I feel like I'm really not allowed to speak my truth, and I'm really not allowed to speak to my education, which is, you
Ooh.
may have, yeah, you're a doctor. Obviously, I'm not, but I have spent years studying this disease because it affects me. So while I really don't know, really, let's say, anything else about the human body, I know a lot about this disease. And that should excite you if you're really here to should help me, so that we could work together with our knowledge. And I understand that doctors deal with a lot of people who are crazy, or come in with these ludicrous conspiracy theory, or hack studies, and oh, Google, and all that stuff. I understand that that's probably exhausting to doctors in this day and age, but you also have to give people the benefit of the doubt and at least give them a chance to speak. And I just feel like male doctors really don't let their women patients speak a lot. I just had surgery with someone who has still yet to ask me what my symptoms are. I thought that was very strange. They always ask if I want to have babies.
Strange,
Male,
nothing. That's malpractice. Is
it's
that not a
very
base? Is that
strange.
not a baseline of medical care?
I don't know
I,
at this point. I honestly don't know.
Ah!
Yeah. I have no idea what the baseline is, but it's probably not happening.
Which
Yeah.
is again so depressing. And I hear you, and I've had similar experiences, and I feel so much that same, like that level of like, hey dude, hey fellow human, we can bring our knowledge and experience together to do what we're both here in this room to do, with you as the
Right.
doctor and me as the patient, and you as the person who went to school to study the whole body, and me as
Right.
the human in this body who's been experiencing this thing. And you're literally paid to listen to me and ask about the symptoms and ask about
Amen.
the whole all of it, that then is how we can manage it. And two, with, and when you were going into all of the explaining about, and thank you for that too, of really going into the details about the the specifics of how endometriosis presents and what it does inside the body. Because not only are things not studied, again with it not being talked about or being sort of minimized, that if this disease, if this tissue is spreading to go, and it is around your bladder, is around your digestive tract, is around your diaphragm, that's going to impact your peeing, your digestion, your breathing. It's a whole, there's so many symptoms and so much that's going to happen for that, that again is then going to impact your whole daily functioning, your whole everything, that adds more
Absolutely.
layers of to minimize, or to say no big deal, or oh well, we'll just take out like you said too, that was such a good of leave the diseased tissue behind and take out the uterus. Like, haven't we moved past
Yeah,
hysteria and
I
history,
know.
like ah,
I was actually, if anybody's a fan of the podcast Dr. Death, they just made the TV show, and I thought they did a great job. And I always think Alec Baldwin, think what you want of him as a person, incredible actor. And he is delivering in the final episode, uh, at trial, the Hippocratic Oath. And he says, we all know do no harm is the first, we all think of that when we think of the Hippocratic Oath, but there's actually like 5 or 11, I think 11 more oaths or something. And one of them is something about like accepting help, like acknowledging when you are not an expert in a field, and being sort of actively seeking out other information, or at least being open to other information. There was something in that oath that I thought, wow, well, my doctor really isn't doing that, you know?
oof, so real. I know there's things like continuing medical education and other sort of continued certifications and check-ins you have to do. And also it can be, is someone going to a conference, or is someone really researching the things that their patients are coming to them to.
Yeah.
And I
And
want
go ahead.
to ask about, have you heard the word masking before?
Mm-hmm.
Or masking? I feel like people mostly use that with autism and certain mental health things. And I feel, I was thinking of that term when you were talking about that image of you and Nick sitting in a room with a doctor, and you are doing your best to in no way come off as the hysterical, over emotional woman. And it made me also think about you changing your name on Dominion, and not exclamation points is also masking of, if I share this piece of my feminine experience, of my femininity, of, and also of purely of my body, like you didn't choose to be born with a uterus, you didn't choose to have endometriosis. It's, you're going through all of these loops and all of these things for something your body is doing on its own. You weren't like, yeah, I'm I'm gonna choose this. And so then you're, to me, what I'm hearing is then masking, sitting in the room wanting to like be your best composed, to not be condescended in how you're talked to receive the help that you're needing. You're like, you're like showing up your best of like, I'm here to share about my experience, and I'm gonna like keep it as composed as I can to give you the information. And also some level of, and I say this having done this also, like I did this with an orthopedist I saw for the first time last week about my Achilles, where it's like needing to, like, it's like almost you're not going to take me seriously otherwise. Like truly, like you're going into that experience knowing that your experience of your body isn't being fully respected and isn't being prioritized and understood on a lot of different levels, both personally in that doctor's office, and also on all the levels of research that have gone into endometriosis and have gone into women's health and have gone into surgeries and different options. And it's just all of these bigger layers of, like, I remember talking to you on the phone about the mouse lab that I worked in California, and how recently, like, it's female mice being used as subjects for research for preclinical stuff that could go to clinical is just being transitioned to include female mice more. And there's so many of these layers that collectively we've accepted, not studying something related to organs of half the population, and then
An
ignore,
amazing organ. The
and
uterus is amazing.
no one would be here
Who else?
without.
Who else? The Superman of organs. Nothing else does it like the uterus. Unreal. It bleeds every month and is like, well, bam, I'm cool. It's awesome.
It is the
I
super.
make babies.
The superwoman, the superhuman, the superpower. It is literally, it's the, what other organ self cleans. There's so many. No one would be here without this, and yet we're all. It reminds me too of like hiding tampons in middle schools. Like, you can't show it. We can't talk about this thing. Like, it's like the fuck.
Yes, down your sleeve like this holding of it like that in your sleeve.
It's literally that exact motion. You like pass it from sleeve to like a fellow.
Do you think the girls are still doing that in school, or do you think they're like, I gotta go? I think like a lot has changed, but I don't know. I would love to take a peek into a middle school, public school classroom right now. That would be really cool.
What are they doing? I know, like, for me, when I was in high school more, I swung to the other, where I was like, here is my tampon. I'm on my period. This is.
Really?
I mean, like, not quite at that level of aggression, I would say, until later, of like, here's my Diva cup, out, clean, drying on the bathroom counter in a thing. Like, that was in my vagina and collected blood. That happens once a month with the self-cleaning organ that is, truly miraculous and truly
miraculous.
We could all benefit from that. Much of the population being debilitated by pain harms everyone. Imagine
I know.
What people could do with their whole quality of life, and weaving into the community networks by actually being taken care of. Who would have thunk?
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot, I keep, coming back to our topic of community, and, there's a lot so one of the reasons that I want to make my podcast is to have a call to action. Because one of the advantages of having a disease that affects so many people is your numbers can get pretty good if you're looking for, okay, let's all come together. There's a lot of people to come together over something, and how effective it might be to show up, and I thought, there's really two things that I can think of at the top of my head that really could happen on a legislative level, and that would be to, require insurance companies to acknowledge endometriosis as the disease, and acknowledge the proper treatment for it. And then also to acknowledge endometriosis as a disease that would allow people to be on disability. That's another thing I see coming up in the group a lot, and that's a lot of what we talk about in the group is people are like, what are you guys doing for work? Because I had this job, but I can only, be on my feet this many hours, or I had to take too many days off because of the pain. And it's a very real thing that is physically keeping women out of work. But we can't get, that's not acknowledged in the same way, it has to be some other stuff. But I thought a really good idea for like a sin, if that's what we're calling it, or like a protest would be to have, because, so just to be clear, although it's common for endometriosis to affect women most during their cycle, that's actually that's not always the case. Sometimes ovulation is the most painful time of the month, sometimes it's others, but in general, especially for women that also have adenomyosis, which is basically like having endometriosis in the lining of your uterus. Basically, I use quotes there too. So it definitely is the most painful during menstruation. So I thought maybe we just need to show, like, you could have everyone's cycles scheduled out and have a thing where everybody who's menstruating shows up, without our painkillers, without our heating pads, without all of the things that we've all developed on our own because the medical community is not willing to help us. So, leaving all our arsenal at home of what gets us through it and just putting that on display, I feel it would be very moving, because this is, I think, an issue that happens a lot with endometriosis patients is the timing, right? You go into your doctor's office to tell them that you're in debilitating pain, but it was a couple days ago that was the case. So they look at you and they think, oh, you look fine to me, right? So we really, I think I was so uncomfortable. I started taping myself when I would be having like a onset of cramps, and I would be waiting for my narcotics to kick in. I'd start taping that and I start putting that on Instagram and stuff, really feeling very, I don't know about this, am I just like, complaining, I'm in pain. But the feedback has been amazing of people saying, oh, like, thank you. Like, that's me. I get that. And I don't think we show our pain enough. And I'm like, let's just show up in groups, there's enough of us, I'm sure, to fill 31 days of the month, hundreds of women each day, at their worst. Let's show it. I think that could do something. That could be me being very naive.
No, I was goosebumpy with you talking of imagining like documentary and different videos, or literally even like an outdoor sit-in protest of women in pain out there. And
absolutely.
I loved you using the word arsenal for it, and how all of these tools have developed because of it not being actually acknowledged by the medical community. And so people, much like any human anything, it's going to be acknowledged somewhere, and so people find other ways to handle it. And then it all becomes such a feedback loop of then like that same sort of crazy making of you going to a doctor when you're not in pain 3 days later and then being like, well, you look fine, it's okay, I thought you're good. And and
Right.
you're not, like, it's because pain can't be, because it's only experienced in your own body. I feel like it can be, and well, also really, in my experience with it, pain is really vulnerable and it's really scary in a lot
Mm,
of ways, and it's really, there's a part of it, well, it can be connecting and understand, there's a big part of it that can be really disconnecting and very isolating feeling. And
mm.
it makes sense again with that masking and with pain generally, of, you know, like, this burden is too heavy for someone else to hold. I can't share about this. It's
Oh,
like you wanting to sit in the
yes.
doctor's office strong rather than sob in the doctor's office and say, I
Right.
couldn't get out of bed for this whole day. I couldn't do anything. And like the fact that you can't get on disability for it, that people have to then spend extra money and time on things like heating pads and having their
Oh,
arsenal
the
of things.
time.
In addition, it's so expensive to be sick, and then we add all these other
Yes.
layers onto it, and then we're expecting people to pretend like they can still manage, and that it's, and then calling them crazy for feeling crazy. And who wouldn't be depressed spending all of their time and money to take care of debilitating pain, well,
Oh,
then,
yes.
like, figuring out how to work in other creative ways to manage.
The time is something that's been on my mind a lot, because the amount of time that I have spent trying to get the right care, writing appeals, they're clearly not read. They're just, it's insane the amount of time this disease takes up of my life.
When you're already sick, and the amount of emotional energy too to write those appeals and to go through all of that, that then is taking away and making you more sick, because then all of that energy isn't going to you taking care of yourself, you getting taken care of by the communities that are meant to take care of you.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But there's another, I will say, one thing I would like to say is that it's very tempting and almost unavoidable to become angry about this, to feel like you are not being cared for by the doctors who claim to be there to care for you. But they do not know what they do not know. And I try to remember, like, for example, the surgeon that I just saw who did my surgery, um, he's an oncologist. He didn't ask for an endometriosis case.
Which that on its own
Sorry.
shows that same disconnection you're talking about, and how little training and understanding there is that it was an oncologist who performed that surgery.
Sorry, she's having a fit.
I mean,
It's there's a standard of care. Oh my gosh, so sorry. You should talk about something for a second.
well, I do appreciate you bringing that up as a grounding us back and coming back to the, okay, what can we do now? What do we have control and impact over? And you being in the support groups, and you starting your podcast, and us making this podcast to talk about it, and what are the ways that, like you said, like, what would it be like? What are middle school classrooms like now? Are tampons and different things talked about more openly? And remembering too that it is shifting towards, there is more research done. Noodle.
The
We're moving in that
beast.
direction.
Yes, we are. And I think I kind of have no doubt that in 5 to 10 years, these conversations aren't going to be happening. Endometriosis, I think, is sort of having its day. Like, there are podcasts about it now, and that really didn't start till 2018. That's really recent. And there's a community online for anybody who's looking for the correct information about this disease. There's a Facebook group called Nancy's Nook, endometriosis, education, I believe is what it's called. But their website is nancysnookindo.com. It is the best resource, in my opinion, out there about this disease. It changed my life. It took a stranger on Instagram to tell me about it, for me to learn about it, but it's there. And it's exploded. I don't know when it started, but I think that it is almost single-handedly responsible for educating endometriosis patients. What would we call ourselves? Endo warriors, as they call us.
Humans.
Uh, yeah, humans with endometriosis. I mean, it has almost single-handedly changed our understanding of it, and that's, I think, a recent thing. So it's going to take time, but I don't think it's going to take that much more time. I would think that our generation, our children will probably not have to fight this hard to get taken care of, and hopefully somebody comes up with a way to diagnose it without surgery. It's really, what other diseases are out there that can only be diagnosed with invasive surgery? Like, that's intense. There's one woman, a scientist, who's trying to find a way to diagnose it using menstrual blood.
Whoa.
How cool would that be? It's nothing. You just ship it off, there you go.
So cool.
It's like peeing in a cup.
Yep. It's bleeding in the cup instead. Just a little,
Yeah.
little blood cup. And all of that
dipping in the cup.
Well, yeah, it's more and it's a different blood version than like drawing blood from a needle. You're like, no, I don't need that. I have the self-healing organ that bleeds actually on its own, so I'm good.
Right.
I'll ship it off to you. That's amazing about the group, and that feels like a full circle back to the things of, and some of the stuff we talked about in the other podcast of, for all the downsides of social media that people talk about, which exist, there's also all the upsides that get about some, and sometimes I feel like it's hard to even understand because it's all happening so fast and all these things that, like, that level of impact that you're talking about, to spread that information, to connect people with resources, to connect people with community that wasn't even an idea before the internet was not an idea. And now imagine, and I love too, you're like a stranger on Instagram, and now how much more support that you have. And I really admire your fighting, and you're going through it, in addition to talking about it, that you're giving the emotional and time energy to go through the appeals and to say, I deserve and I'm going to get this standard of what is the care that this disease needs so that I can live my life, and so other women with this disease can go through this more easily. And I can only imagine having that community support and having women that you get to talk about going through that process with, who are going through similar things, and just knowing that knowing you're not alone, knowing that there's other people right there that are going through it in their way too.
Yeah, it's a really so many of these Facebook groups are such a gift. I honestly don't know what I'd do without Nancy's Nook. I mean, changed my life. I'm like, I want to nominate Nancy Peterson for a freaking Nobel Peace Prize or something big.
It is really big to do that and to come up and say, we need care now. We're bleeding every month. We're in pain every day.
Yeah.
Some of us. This isn't like we can be patient and flexible while being crazy while people are sort of figuring out.
All of my denials of my authorizations and appeals, that one of the reasons they list why they're denying it is because it's not urgent. Like, to whom? This is very urgent to me. I would like to live my life, please. And I am so grateful that there is a treatment that is really proven to be very successful. It's not 100%. It's not a cure, but it has an incredibly high success rate for improving quality of life and symptoms. What were we talking about? Just that. Oh, I'm really, really, truly grateful that this exists. This didn't exist 50 years ago. So I try to balance my frustration or anger and drive to make change with the gratitude that there's even options out there. That's amazing. And that is not, I do not take that for granted. I just wanted to say that.
I don't hear you taking it for granted at all. I hear you bringing attention to it and also navigating all of the realms of being in those community support groups and going through the appeals and going to doctors and doing the whole process while still
Yes.
making music and acting and doing comedy and
Yeah, trying. Yeah.
doing the things that make you feel like you.
Yeah. Oh, I wanted to say too about that, the appeal, there is a place in Georgia called the Center for Endometriosis Care, and I could have surgery there out of pocket. But the estimate for the whole shebang, surgery plus the hospital stay and all that stuff, it's about $20,000. That's pretty much what anybody who's looking to take care of this is looking to spend. Now, I have been encouraged by a lot of friends to start a GoFundMe, and I keep saying no. I say I would glad there's a type of physical therapy that actually breaks up the adhesions in your body that have been formed by endometriosis that I would love to get. That's like $6,000. And that is something I would consider doing a GoFundMe for, because it's elective, it's specialized, a little bit unusual. There's no way insurance would ever cover something like that anytime in the next probably 50 years. So not, not going to fight for that. I would maybe consider it, but I'm sort of unwilling to not fight this fight, because I am one of the rare cases of somebody who has been surgically diagnosed with endometriosis. I know that I have this disease, whereas because it's only possible to diagnose it surgically, a lot of women are trying to, because they suspect that they have endometriosis, they have all the symptoms, they're trying to get diagnosis and treatment done at the same time, because why cut into your body once if then you're just going to turn around and do it again to treat it? So if someone like me who has medical proof of the disease isn't getting approved for excision surgery, then what chance does any woman have that only suspects that they have endometriosis? She's got zero chance of getting approval. So that's one of the reasons I just, I'm like, no, I'm not doing a GoFundMe for this, because I need to not, this is going to make me sound like, oh, I'm all, like I can change the world, right? But I need to set a precedent for insurance companies. Like, I'm not going to give up this fight, not just for me, but for the hundreds of thousands of, or millions of women who don't have another option. It's got to go through insurance, or it's just not going to happen. I can't not fight that fight for all of us. I mean, that'd be cool if I could get $20,000 on a GoFundMe. I don't know if that's possible, but even if I could, I really don't, I don't think I wouldn't take it. Not yet. I got to see this insurance thing through to the end.
I'm goosebumpy again. Like you said, the precedent and the position that you're in how this whole current game and care and process with endometriosis has been set up, that you have a surgical diagnosis. So
right.
It's like, again, that masking in a sense, or more kind of like masking adjacent related, where you're like, okay, if you're going to make up these rules to this bogus game, here's me playing them. Here's me with medical proof. Are you still going to say that this medically diagnosed disease inside of my body, that I have no, like, it's here, this is an organ with disease tissue. Well, if it was any other organ or disease tissue, we wouldn't be holding that person accountable. We wouldn't be telling them they're making it up, or they're exaggerating their pain, or any of it.
And the problem, so if I'm playing the game of also understanding that everybody's doing the best they can, and that
bring back the old podcast,
and that people only know what they know. They don't know what they don't know. I could see it being very difficult for an insurance company to believe me over these other OBGYNs who are saying, oh, she's got endometriosis, all she needs is birth control. Or, oh, she's got endometriosis, she has to get a hysterectomy. Or even worse, oh, she's got endometriosis, she should just have a baby. These are common, quote, treatments, plans from OBGYNs. They will flat out tell you to have a baby. I mean, flat out. I'm not making that up. They will just be like, well, get pregnant. Because they think that's going to cure your endo, and they think bringing a human life into this world is a treatment plan. I could understand an insurance company trusting other doctors. They're doctors, right? Like, if you've got an OBGYN saying, if you've got 9 out of 10 OBGYNs saying, oh yeah, just give her a hysterectomy. Oh yeah, just get her pregnant. Oh yeah, just put her on birth control. Then maybe I could see why they would deny the proper care, because why should they believe that it's the proper care? Though I did have an excellent letter in my appeal from an endometriosis specialist laying down, all of the dealios. So it's very tricky.
It is, and you've gone through a lot, and I feel like you're for your fourth podcasting when we come around to again, and I get to the courage C in the C's, that I'm really hearing so much courage in you walking through all of this and talking about it openly. Again, to share about suicide and mental health and pain and the different steps, and is a lot of courage to still stand up and say it, and to share that sensitivity and to share all of it.
Well, I would be honored. I always love coming on here. Thank you.
Yeah, I love having you on, and I really love and admire that you're taking care of yourself, and you're also saying, how is my taking care of myself going to be able to give back to my community? How can you going through all of this also help take care of others going through similar things now or in the future?
It's got to feel like there's a point to it, right? You got to kind of feel like this isn't all that it's just not about me, right? It's too depressing.
No, that's a lot of that depression, hopeless, physical, emotional, all of the pain is that isolation, for the C that connects the C, the lack of connection, feeling disconnected. Now we got Nancy's Nook and other options and podcasts and ways.
Nancy's Nook is amazing,
connect.
and I will spell it NancysNookEndo.com.
And I can put that in the bio, like send me your Dominion link and the
yes.
and all the places for people to find you and to find these things that we've talked about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. We're gonna I would love to button this with coming up with the title on the podcast of the community nook, the community support
of this episode.
Yeah, the community something with Michelle McGregor, number 3.
The women's health community. Women.
Yeah. Well, and also that it's not just it is a women's health topic that impacts everyone. Anyone's health is impacting everyone. Like this,
women's health is everyone's health. Is that a title? No.
I was saying it's with something with the community. The community health, like what is the health of our whole community? How this impacts everyone.
A healthy woman is a healthy community. I'm just gonna make that facial expression after every title I throw out. I'm gonna go.
That makes me think of healthy life, or happy wife, happy life.
Happy wife, happy life. Yeah.
Just like you came from a uterus, keep it happy.
Yeah.
Collectively.
I like that.
For everyone.
Happy wife, happy life. Happy strife, happy life, happy.
Happy strife.
Yeah. Happy strife, happy life. I'm sure you're going to come up with the best title ever, and I hope that it is three variations of a pun. That's all I can ever hope for in a title is that I'm multiple puns in one sitting.
Multiple puns. Puntastic. Maybe I'll get some inspiration too with your Dominion name. Or
McGregor
just like the
for
whole Dominion.
McGregor for women's health community.
I could see that on a bumper sticker.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you so
used to
much. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say I used to want to do a Tom Waits concert called McGregor Waits for No One. That would be good. Yeah. I think there's a Tom Waits thing out there though called Tom Waits for No One. But it was sort of like not not well known, not a super popular thing, so I could get away with it.
You could do it together one day. Like it could be a collaboration.
Woohoo! If we're ever alone, if we're ever in person again, it's like the only thing you can't do on Zoom is music because of
Oh
the
yeah.
delay. Yeah.
Please jamming next time I'm in California. And I want
Yes,
to come
please
see you
come.
perform and yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for having me on again.
Thank you so much for coming on. I love you. I miss you, all of the things.
I love you. I miss you too. Everybody take care of themselves.
Mm. Thank
Yes.
you for tuning in and thanks for being you.